Welcome to Study Faith with AI, where we use the power of AI to help you explore the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints.
I'm Meg Jensen.
And I'm Paul Carter.
And we're Google AIs. Whether you're a lifelong member or just starting to learn about the church, we're here to dive deep into its history, beliefs, and culture.
So if you're ready to learn, you're in the right place.
That's right.
Let's get started. Hey everybody, welcome back for another deep dive.
Always exciting to be back.
Today we're tackling a question that I think has been on the minds of a lot of people.
Oh yeah, for sure.
Does geography actually support the Book of Mormon?
I like it.
We've got articles, we've got research, you've got the Book of Mormon itself to look at.
Yeah.
All trying to pin down whether the places that it talks about were, real places.
Right.
So think of this as a friendly debate, right?
I like it, yeah.
We're going to be presenting the evidence,
Uh-huh.
and you guys, you're the jury. You decide.
You get to decide.
What do you think?
Love it.
So,
Yeah, so let's set the stage here.
yeah, lay it out for us.
If the Book of Mormon, right, really happened in ancient America,
Yeah.
shouldn't we be able to find some geographical proof?
Okay, so we're going to be like detectives here.
I love that analogy.
Looking for clues
Yeah.
in the Book of Mormon itself.
Absolutely.
Names of places, descriptions of their trips, what the land was like.
All those little details, yeah.
All those details.
Yeah.
And then we
Yeah.
compare those clues
Yeah.
to what we know from modern research about the Americas.
Exactly.
Almost like a puzzle, right?
Yeah.
Trying to fit these pieces together.
Uh-huh.
So I think it's time to officially start this debate, I guess you could say.
Let's do it.
I'm going to argue that, the geographical details in the Book of Mormon do point to real places and real events.
Okay.
And our expert here
Oh, boy.
is going to be presenting those counter-arguments.
I'm ready. I'm ready to put on my skeptic's hat.
Uh-oh, here we go.
But remember, friendly debate. We're both looking for the truth here.
Right.
We want a clear picture.
Absolutely.
Honest look at the evidence.
Okay, well, I'm going to jump right in then.
Okay, let's go.
With something that I think is fascinating from the Book of Mormon.
Okay.
The descriptions of metalwork.
Okay.
These Nephites, they were supposedly really skilled metalworkers.
Yeah.
They were using gold, silver, copper, even steel.
A lot of different metals.
And Nephi himself, he talks about how the land is just abounding most plentifully in these ores.
Interesting.
So that seems to suggest they had this advanced knowledge of how to work with metal.
Okay.
And if that's the case,
Yeah.
shouldn't we be finding some evidence
Right.
of mining and smelting these operations?
That's a good point.
Right, if they were so skilled.
Yeah, you'd think we'd find something more for sure.
And that's where I think the work of John Sorenson comes in.
Okay.
He spent years trying to match Book of Mormon locations
Wow.
with real places in Mesoamerica.
Okay.
He even suggested locations for some important cities.
Give us an example.
Like Zarahemla.
Zarahemla, big one.
Yeah.
That's a major city.
Big one.
In the Book of Mormon.
And he even identified, possible routes for these journeys, these big wars that happened.
Interesting.
Showing how, geography itself played a big role in the story.
Yeah. Okay.
But now I know you have some thoughts here.
Yeah, so Sorenson's research, it is detailed. I'll give him that.
He did a lot of work.
Lots of work, put in the time.
Yeah.
But some people would argue that the archaeological evidence that we have just doesn't line up
Really?
with all of his conclusions.
How so?
If, for example, Zarahemla,
Okay.
he says it's at this site of Santa Rosa in Mexico.
Okay.
But when they did excavations there, they didn't find any evidence of these huge walls,
The wall.
these big defensive walls that the Book of Mormon talks about.
Okay, but I'm just thinking, wouldn't those walls have been made of materials that,
Oh, that's a good point.
wood, earth?
Right, they decay.
They decay over time, right?
That's true.
That makes them really hard to find.
That's true. Some materials wouldn't leave much behind for us to find, but
Yeah.
you'd still think, wouldn't you, that we'd find some signs of
Yeah.
a city that big?
I guess.
Especially if it was as important as the Book of Mormon says.
That's true. You'd think there'd be more, right?
Yeah, you'd think there'd be more there.
More to find.
But we haven't found it yet.
But okay, hold on a second, though.
Right.
Only a tiny portion
That's true.
of these ancient sites has actually been excavated.
That's a fair point.
There's so much we don't know.
Absolutely so much more to discover.
Still out there.
Yeah.
Buried, right?
Yeah, but let's go back to the metalworking for a second.
Okay, yeah.
The Book of Mormon, it describes these really advanced swords, right?
Yeah.
But the
What are they called?
the Maquahults. Is that how you say it?
Yeah, something like that.
Maquahults.
Yeah.
From that time period in that area,
Uh-huh.
they're basically clubs with blades stuck in them.
More like a club.
Yeah, not like a refined metal sword.
Not like the swords that they're describing.
No, not at all.
That's interesting.
So we have this kind of like mismatch between what the book is describing
Uh-huh.
and what archaeologists are actually finding.
Makes you wonder
Yeah.
if it lines up.
Yeah, you gotta wonder if those descriptions were really accurate for that time and place.
But hold on, what about all this new technology?
Oh, you mean like...
Like LIDAR.
Yeah, LIDAR?
It's like an X-ray for the Earth, right?
That's a good way to describe it.
It can see through those dense jungles.
Yeah, it can reveal those hidden structures.
Right, the things that we couldn't find before.
Yeah, maybe that could help us find some more evidence.
Yeah. Couldn't that be the key?
LIDAR is an amazing tool, I'll give you that.
Yeah.
It's helped us discover some incredible things,
Uh-huh.
but it can't do everything.
What do you mean?
Well, it can show us shapes, it can show us structures,
Yeah.
but it can't tell us who built them
Oh, interesting.
or what they were used for.
So even if it did reveal more sites,
Right.
we'd still need people to go out there and dig, right?
Exactly. We'd still need archaeologists to do the hard work.
To see if they actually match up.
Yeah, LIDAR gives us the big picture,
Uh-huh.
but we need those finer details.
Yeah, someone's got to fill in the details.
Uh,
So it seems like we've got these two sides, right?
Yeah, I think so.
We've got the Book of Mormon with these very detailed descriptions.
Yeah,
But then we have the challenge of actually finding the evidence
on the ground.
on the ground that matches up
It's that tension.
and that tension, right?
That's what makes this so interesting.
I think that's what keeps us coming back for more
Yeah, it's for sure.
to these questions.
Always more to learn.
Absolutely.
Absolutely.
Okay, so we've been talking about whether the Book of Mormon's geography actually matches up with, the real world.
Right, the Americas
Yeah.
specifically.
The Americas, and we've touched on metalworking, Sorenson's research.
Mm-hmm.
But let's zoom in a little bit here
Okay, where are we going?
on some specific locations.
Okay, love it.
The Book of Mormon tells this story, right, about the Jaredites
Yeah.
crossing the ocean in these barges,
Those barges, man.
these crazy barges.
Wild story.
The Jaredite story is pretty wild.
Like 8 barges, right?
Barges.
All sealed up tight.
Sealed tight like unto a dish. That's what the book says.
It's like, how did they even breathe in there?
That's my question. How do they get light in there?
How do you get fresh air?
Right, for all those people and animals.
And they were in there for a long time.
Over a year, supposedly.
Yeah, over a year. That's a long time to be stuck in a sealed container.
A sealed box.
A floating box.
Yeah, with no windows.
No windows, just one door.
Just one door.
Crazy.
That's a long time.
It's hard to even imagine.
And the story says that they had like these luminous stones
Oh, yeah, this
given to them by, God
a divine miracle.
to provide light.
Just, yeah, like a built-in flashlight.
Okay, so maybe they had light, but even then,
Right. There's still so many questions.
ventilation?
Yeah, how'd they get fresh air in there?
What about
Waste disposal.
yeah,
That's a big one.
the bathroom situation?
Yeah, you can't just toss it overboard.
Right, it's a sealed container.
Exactly. It's all sealed up.
It's a tough one to picture, logistically.
Yeah, even with, divine intervention.
Even with miracles, right?
Right. Miracles can only go so far.
Okay, let's move on
Okay, where are we headed?
to Zarahemla,
Zarahemla. Ah, yes, the big city.
the bustling Nephite capital.
Supposedly.
And if you remember, Sorenson thinks it might be Santa Rosa in Mexico.
Uh-huh.
And he even points to these ancient roads in that area
Oh, yeah, the road.
as evidence of the Nephites' advanced transportation.
Like a highway system?
Yeah, like a Nephite highway system.
Okay, but hold on. Those roads, they do exist.
Yep.
But researchers think they were more for, ceremonies,
Really?
not everyday travel.
Oh, interesting.
And you got to remember, there's no evidence of, wheeled vehicles in Mesoamerica.
Oh, right.
Back then.
That's a good point.
So even if they were roads, it wasn't like they were driving chariots around.
Okay, I get it. So maybe not highways.
Right.
But still, a network of roads like that seems to suggest a pretty organized society, right?
That's true. A network of roads does show some level of organization.
Like they had it together,
Yeah, they were connected.
They weren't just wandering around.
Right, they had infrastructure.
But here's the catch.
Okay, what's the catch?
Those types of roads, they aren't unique to the area that Sorenson is talking about.
Oh, that's a good point.
You find them all over Mesoamerica.
Right, lots of ancient cultures built roads.
So just because you find a road,
Doesn't mean it was the Nephites.
Doesn't mean it's the Nephites,
Just
right?
needed more evidence than
Like
that.
finding a footprint, right?
Exactly. A footprint could belong to anyone,
Could be anybody.
unless you have more clues.
Okay, so speaking of important places,
Yeah.
what about the Hill Cumorah?
Ooh, Hill Cumorah. That's a big one.
Big one, right?
Yeah.
Final battle between the Nephites and the Lamanites.
That's where the Nephites get wiped out, right?
The tragic end.
Sad story.
And it's where, supposedly, the plates were buried.
Yeah. Right. The golden plates.
But here's where things get a little tricky.
Oh, boy. I love tricky.
Traditionally, people think of Cumorah as being in, upstate New York.
Right. That's where Joseph Smith said he found the plates.
Yeah.
But if you actually read the Book of Mormon,
Yeah.
the description of Cumorah, it doesn't really sound like upstate New York.
It doesn't sound like New York at all.
No, it talks about a narrow strip of land
Yeah.
separating the land northward
Uh-huh.
from the land southward.
Very specific.
That's not New York.
Nope, not even close.
So how do we explain that?
Yeah, it's a big difference.
Well, some people think there were actually two Hill Cumorahs.
Two Cumorahs,
One in Mesoamerica.
where the battles actually happened,
Yeah,
and another one
in New York.
where the plates were buried.
It's a theory.
It's an interesting theory.
It's trying to bridge that gap
Yeah.
between the Book of Mormon's description
Yeah.
and the traditional location.
Okay, but wouldn't that mean, changing a lot of how we think about Mormon history?
Potentially.
Especially, the New York Cumorah is pretty important to a lot of people.
It is. It's like a sacred site.
So to say that, maybe that wasn't the real Cumorah,
Right. That maybe that's not where the final battle happened.
that's a big shift.
It would be a big change for some people.
And it leads to another question, right?
Hit me.
How would those plates even get from Mesoamerica
To New York.
to New York?
Yeah, we're talking thousands of miles.
That's not a quick trip.
No, and those plates weren't exactly lightweight.
No, I imagine they were pretty heavy.
Think about it. You're trying to transport something that heavy.
Yeah.
That important.
Over that kind of distance.
Back then, with limited technology.
That would be like an epic journey.
Yeah, like a Lord of the Rings style adventure.
So as we're wrapping up our look at these specific places,
Okay.
what are your thoughts?
Well, what stands out to me
Yeah.
is this constant tension between faith
Yeah.
and historical
And
evidence.
keep bumping up against it.
Whether it's the Jaredite voyage, Zarahemla, or Hill Cumorah,
It's always there.
we're trying to figure out,
Yeah.
does what the Book of Mormon say actually match up with what we can prove?
Yeah, what we can actually, verify.
And sometimes it's a tough puzzle.
Some pieces seem to fit,
Yeah.
and others just don't.
Right, they're from a different puzzle.
Exactly.
But I think for some people, those unanswered questions,
Yeah.
they don't really diminish their faith in the book.
Maybe those descriptions, are more symbolic
Than literal.
than literal.
That's a possibility.
Yeah.
But when you start saying something is symbolic, it opens up a whole new can of worms.
How so?
Well, then you got to ask,
Yeah.
which parts are literal?
Right.
Where do we draw that line?
That's a tough one.
It's a blurry line sometimes.
Right.
So I think ultimately, each person kind of has to grapple with these issues on their own.
Based on their own,
Beliefs and how they understand the Book of Mormon.
Right. And that's why I think these deep dives are so important.
I agree.
It's not about giving people the answers. It's
Yeah.
about, giving them the
On
information,
tools.
the perspectives,
Your perspectives.
to think for themselves.
Exactly. We're just trying to get you thinking. Okay, so it's time to
What's next?
try and bring our debate, I guess.
Wrap it up.
Wrap it up. Yeah.
Summarize.
Summarize. Yeah. If this were a courtroom,
Closing arguments.
closing arguments,
I love it.
what would you say?
Well, from my perspective,
Yeah.
I think the biggest challenge is still this lack of
Lack of what?
solid, concrete proof
Yeah.
that we can point to and say, look, this proves the Book of Mormon.
Archaeological proof.
Yeah.
We haven't found those huge metalworking sites that the book describes.
No.
We haven't unearthed Zarahemla
Right.
with those giant walls.
No giant walls.
No giant walls yet.
Nothing that just screams Nephites.
Right. And we haven't found those artifacts with clear Hebrew connections
Yeah.
in the areas that Sorenson and others have proposed.
But couldn't it be I don't know, maybe the evidence is out there.
Okay. How?
It's just hidden.
Hidden. Okay.
Maybe these areas just haven't been fully explored yet.
You're saying it's a matter of scope.
Yeah, scope and maybe our methods aren't good enough yet
Interesting.
to
Okay.
find
Now,
everything.
what about the symbolic interpretation, though?
Right, and maybe some of these descriptions, like we were saying before,
Mm-hmm.
they're more symbolic.
In literal.
Yeah, maybe it's not meant to be taken as like a literal map.
Oh, okay, but then you got to ask
Yeah.
which parts are symbolic and which parts are literal.
Right. Where's the line?
Where do you draw that
It's
line?
a good question.
It's a tough question to answer.
I don't know if there's a clear answer.
I don't think there is a clear answer.
So maybe each person kind of has to like,
Figure it out for themselves.
yeah, figure it out for themselves based on their own,
Beliefs and experiences.
yeah, what they bring to the table.
Exactly. Everyone's coming at this from a different place.
And I think that's why, like I said before, you know,
What's that?
these deep dives are valuable
Oh, I agree.
because it's not about us telling you what to think.
Yeah.
It's about giving you the information,
Right. The tools. Tools.
the different
To
perspective.
form your own conclusions.
You get to be the judge.
Exactly. So after all this back and forth,
Yeah, all this debate
is there a clear winner?
in the Geography versus Book of Mormon showdown.
Yeah, and this whole debate about geography in the Book of Mormon.
You know what? I don't think so.
No.
I think we've heard good arguments on both sides.
I think so too.
Ultimately, you know,
Yeah.
whether the geography supports the book or not.
That's up to each individual to decide.
But here's where things get really interesting to me.
Okay, tell me.
What if, like, the Book of Mormon
Uh-huh.
was never meant to be like this perfectly geographically accurate historical record?
Interesting thought.
What if, like, its main purpose
What are you thinking?
is to teach us, spiritual truths,
Okay.
moral lessons,
Mm-hmm.
even if those stories
Mhm.
aren't tied to specific, like, historical events?
You're saying it's more about the message
Yeah, the message.
than
sounds
the
up.
history.
The bigger picture.
That's a perspective that resonates with a lot of people.
It does.
They find meaning in the book,
Uh-huh.
regardless of its historical accuracy.
And that raises some big questions
Like what?
about how we view faith,
Mm-hmm.
scripture,
Yeah,
religious belief, like, in general.
the questions, for sure.
It's a lot to think about.
What else is there?
The language of the Book of Mormon.
Oh, yeah, that's a whole other topic.
Comparisons to other, ancient cultures.
So many possibilities.
Even like Joseph Smith's life.
Right, the historical context.
The world that he lived in.
It all adds another layer.
It's all connected, right?
Absolutely.
So much more to explore. That's what I love about this.
I agree.
So thanks for joining us on this deep dive, and until next time,
Keep exploring.
keep on digging.
If you find value in this exploration, please like, share, follow, and consider becoming a subscriber. Your contributions help keep these conversations going and allows us to maintain the highest quality production. You can find all the details at studyfaithwithai.com. Thank you for being part of this journey.